you and I have talked about reproductive issues before, proxy voting for new moms in Congress, as well as the Right to Try IVF Act of 2024. Senators Katie Britt and Ted Cruz introduced the IVF Protection Act, which would strip states of Medicaid funding if they restricted access to IVF. What are your thoughts on the legislation?
I mean, I think our legislation is better, but what I will say is, and what I found is that you would think that these issues, especially whether it's voting by proxy for new moms or IVF, should be bipartisan. And what I've found is because of the fact that we are in an election year, a lot of Democrats, to include, Hakeem Jeffries, who I thought was supposed to be the champion of women's rights based on his branding and constant attack on Republicans. He actually told Democrats not to get on my bill, my proxy bill for voting, and then also my IVF bill. And I think that that's because we're going into an election cycle, and you're seeing that they're losing the issues on the economy, they're losing the issues on border security, and so they're trying to make this about reproductive rights. And I think it's pretty evident that they're not even for women. So I think the Democrats are in for a big loss this November.
It's interesting you say that, because IVF, when I have talked about it before, up until the controversial Alabama ruling a few months ago, hasn't been a controversial issue. It's just been a thing that everyone, or if you have trouble getting pregnant, you can use that. That's at your disposal. It currently is legal in all 50 states. So why not just set a law codifying IVF and then take the politics out of it?
I think that would probably be too common sense for Washington. And unfortunately, I never thought that I would see a male leaders of a party that claims to be the party of women, the Democrat Party, tell members not to get on my bill, whether it's for maternity voting or IVF for that reason. And it's unfortunate, right? Because right after I actually was trying to fix this, and I actually was one of the only members in Congress to actually come up with legislation, the Democrats refused to sign on to it.
And what was their reasoning, publicly and privately?
They were saying that it was too narrow, but I don't believe it was that. We actually heard that it was Hakeem that was telling people not to sign on to it, and same with my vote by proxy.
So do you think we're going to be seeing any IVF legislation soon? From what you were saying earlier, probably not, because it is an election year.
I think that we will see IVF legislation, if not via executive order, after Trump's elected. I know that based on what we're seeing, and obviously you saw Donald Trump Jr. actually did a really great interview on this recently, but President Trump, who, as you know, I've supported and endorsed, is a massive advocate for that. I think that people that are trying to say that IVF is somehow selective abortion or will create this, 1984 world, I think that they're just not informed. A lot of people, if you do know someone who's done IVF, have to do multiple rounds. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be effective. It's extremely expensive. And I don't think that anyone would go through that process unless they really want to have children. And as you know, as a new mom, kids are a blessing. I encourage everyone to have kids. I think that they're amazing, but it really does change your life. And I think for people to try to use this as a political tool just shows how out of touch they are.